All right, so I'm in a different location to do the video because the girls have taken over the man cave. We've all been sick. Noelle has influenza A, and now she's getting a lot better. Zeta was the last one to actually get really sick, and now she's starting to feel better. I'm all right. I mean, sore throat, but I think I'm okay. But wanted to talk about the docuseries again, is Seattle Dying, because some people in the comments, when you read, not our comments, but when you look at this documentary, which I have to say was done very, very well. KOMO News seems to be a very good source for documentaries locally, because they've done a lot of other things too in the past that have been put together very, very, very well. The one, when you see this, the docuseries is Seattle Dying, it includes portions that are from a different part of their series, which was done in 2017, I believe, which talked about the whole drug element. And so anyhow, it was done very, very well. And I hope that they do a whole lot more, because for one, it gives you a perspective that you didn't even think about. And for two, they're just really, really good. A lot of information in there. And it's objective. One of the reasons why I do the channel the way that I do when we're talking about videos, or just in general, and I'm sorry if I'm sinking down. If you see me slowly sinking, it's because I have a gel foam mattress. I'm on my bed, and so you might see me go down. I can feel myself moving. But anyway, one of the reasons why we do the channel the way that we do is because I want to give you the true perspective that I witness and what I see. Right? I don't want to just give you this polished pretty of life here, that, everything is great and, all of that, because there are some great things, there are some bad things. There's some experiences that people talk about that they've experienced. I've never experienced those things. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist. It's just that I personally have not went through those particular things, or I haven't seen those particular things. When we talk about is Seattle dying, I can see why it has been such a struggle for the city. There's been a lot of bad policies, and I talk about this in different aspects. And I'll talk about from the just from the public transit side of things. There's been bad policies when it comes to businesses and how they've treated Amazon and different things. Seattle has not done a good job, and we have current leadership, which is probably, in my opinion, the worst. And you really and truly have people who feel entitled to the position, I feel, but they don't really know what they're doing. And I've said that before. The mayor of Seattle, the current mayor, Miss Durkin, in my opinion, and she's in the video as Seattle 9, I don't think she knows what she's doing. Maybe a smaller city, but a city the size of Seattle, which is complicated, running a city is extremely complicated. And it's a hard job. I get it. But I think that she really is out of her league in many respects, because there are other things that have been exacerbated since she's taken over. Now, that's not to say that Mr. Ed Murray, who was the mayor before, that he didn't help bring it to that point. But I think that there's been a long history of decisions that's been made in Seattle, or decisions that haven't been made that should have been made, which is really affecting the city today. And when you add the explosive population growth, it only exacerbates all these other issues. When you also add in the cost of living, it exacerbates it as well. But when you look at the current situation in terms of homelessness, there's a lot of stuff there that's not just, because the big problem that the city is doing now, including Mayor Durkin, is they're wanting to increase money for housing, affordable housing, and the whole head tax, which is a very sour sticking point. I knew when I read about them doing that, that was going to be a bad thing, because, I went to business school, and knowing how businesses work and how they form and how they just the life of a business, the more taxes you put onto a business, no matter the size of the company, a lot of times there's going to be more issues. Now, that's not to say that companies like Amazon that don't pay certain taxes that they should, sure, I think that they definitely should, and there should be different policies and codes put in place to make sure that they do pay their fair share. But when we're talking about the head tax, the way it was designed just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And it really would just force the company to go someplace else locally. It's not like we're just in a one-horse town and there's no, the suburbs are just basically country farmland. I mean, we have other places where it could easily absorb the Amazon headquarters. I mean, Bellevue, for example, Tacoma, for example. It's easy for them to just basically up and move, and all of their workforce is still here locally. I mean, it's not like they would have to go all the way to, Spokane, for example, and worry about their workers. So given the fact that there's so many other options, the head tax did make sense. And also the money that they were raising was to deal with affordable housing, but that doesn't really tackle most of the homelessness that's going on in Seattle. Most of that is due to substance abuse. And then a lot of that could be due to mental illness. Some of the people who have mental illnesses cannot really and truly work. So because we don't, the whole point that the mayor is trying to push is, well, because it's so expensive to live here, it's Amazon's fault. And I've said this before to people that's not accurately, that's not accurate. Yes, did Amazon make the price of everything go up here in terms of houses? Sure. Absolutely. But even if Amazon stops hiring, the price of homes are still going to go up. Maybe not as fast. This was the whole point that I was trying to make about Amazon HQ2 in New York. Yes, it will make the process speed up. But it's not fair to say that the homeless situation is due to the cost of living here. Some people fall into that. Some people can't afford to live here because the property tax go up, but that's not due to Amazon. That's due to city policies. That's due to Sound Transit. It's not necessarily due to Amazon doesn't control property taxes. So you have to look at the issues that are at hand. I'm pretty objective when it comes to that. I don't choose a political party at all because I think it's stupid. But anyway, I don't choose Republican, Democrat, Independent, none of that stuff. I look at what the situation is, what the facts are, and then try to go from there. And to me, the whole head tax thing was just stupid because it was not going to solve the issue. You're going to have all that money. You're going to deal with affordable housing, but it's still not going to solve the issue of homelessness because the individuals that are out there are sick. They're addicted to drugs, and that's the issue that you have to solve first. Then you can deal with some of the other stuff later. But a lot of these police officers are even saying, what's the point of arresting them whenever it's just a revolving door. And I understand that. This video is really intending to talk about Tacoma. Is Tacoma following the same projection of Seattle or the same path when it comes to this particular issue? Now, when you read some of the comments that people have posted about this video, not on our video, as I said, but on the KOMO website, there were some people who said that Tacoma's not far behind. Someone on our channel also said the same thing, that Tacoma's not far behind. I would have to somewhat agree that I think that if Tacoma doesn't do certain things, it's going to follow the same path of Seattle. Portland. A lot of the people who watched this video were from Portland. They were saying Portland is the exact same way. Why? Because in this area, it seems like we just jail people, just jail them, and that's it. The problem with that is that you end up having a huge amount of people behind bars. The courts are already overwhelmed. When you have a region that has grown so quickly, the court system hasn't grown with it. And so after a while, in order to and the jails they can't keep up. So basically they have to just cut them loose. And so because the people that are doing the heinous stuff, the bad stuff, really bad stuff, I should say, are the ones that they want to keep in there. So they have to cut the ones who are doing stuff that they shouldn't loose, right? So the low-level criminals, they cut out. Then it got to the point where they're not even worried about it. They're just saying, forget it. Don't even go after them. We don't have the resources for you to do that. And so that's the situation in these fast-growing cities. Fast-growing, Portland's fast-growing, Seattle's fast-growing, Tacoma's fast-growing. When you look at Bellevue, it's a completely different thing. Bellevue is still in King County, but the city sets its own policies. And when you look at the police, they're able to do a whole lot more than the folks here in Seattle. Now, will Bellevue face the same situation? I highly doubt it. The demographics of Bellevue prevent that from happening to a degree, but wealth does not necessarily control homelessness, because you can go to Hollywood and find homeless people. So that's not necessarily it. It involves several different things. Tacoma, I was just down there the other night, driving through downtown, and I've noticed downtown at night, I'm seeing more and more homeless people. More and more. And now this could be due to a couple of different things. This is how I tie this video into, is Tacoma following the same path? And I say it's possible. Right now, no. We don't have the same situations of Seattle. Seattle is pretty much the only city in the region that has the homeless situation the way that it does, to be honest with you. We have a large homeless population here in Tacoma, without a doubt. But it's not as bad or as robust as what you see up in Seattle. It's a huge issue. And we're talking big areas of the city now that you never thought of are facing this problem. It used to be that you saw a lot of people in their RVs or in their cars or what have you. And now that has exploded. You see a lot of that. I remember when I lived up there, you saw some of that. Now it's big, huge areas of the city. Tacoma has some homeless encampments, but the city addresses the homelessness situation a little bit different. I've talked about that, how Tacoma wants to find ways to actually handle the homelessness situation, and Seattle doesn't look to Tacoma for any sort of example. Sorry, that's Zeta's little guitar. So they don't want to look to Tacoma for a solution. Now, I think that Tacoma is doing the right thing, but there's more that it could do. I think that the drug situation is something that needs to be tackled, because if we don't get a hold of that, the addiction part, then yes, we're going to be just as bad as Seattle. But you can walk the streets of Tacoma downtown and you never smell urine. Like, you can walk, I've never smelt it anywhere, to be honest with you. Never. Never seen human feces. Now, you'll see some dog poop. Just, I was mowing the grass today and I saw some. You have a lot of people here in this area with dogs and they walk them. You'll see that. But as far as human poop or pee, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I've never seen it in Tacoma downtown, outside of there. There are areas where you see a lot of homelessness. And I haven't seen it. Not saying it doesn't happen, I just haven't seen it. And it could be because of how the city handles the homelessness. There are areas where I think that there's a problem. Remember, I did a video talking about the ghost of Gertie. That area, which is where Sound Transit put up that art piece, is where a lot of homelessness slept. A lot of homeless people, they slept in that area. Right? It's just a grassy knoll, and there was a lot of homeless people that camped out there. During the colder months, they would strike fires over there, and people were worried they're going to burn down the whole embankment, because here, when it gets really, probably I'd say around October, everything turns, all the grass dies. So it's basically straw. So people were concerned they were going to end up catching the whole thing on fire. Well, now that they put the ghost of Gertie there, they put up a huge chain link fence around that to keep people out of it, mainly to keep the homeless out of it. So those folks are being pushed out. They no longer can stay there because there's a fence and a big giant octopus. So it could be that downtown is seeing more homelessness because they've been pushed out. However, I think that the city needs to do something about that, because, again, this is what Seattle's problem was. It pushed homelessness out of the International District. I remember this. There used to be under the bridge a long section for probably about a block. you would see nothing but homeless people. And then one day the city went through and just pushed all those people out. Well, then they all flooded into different areas of downtown. And then they would push them out of there. Then they would flood someplace else. So what happens is they just move around because no one's really putting them into treatment programs. The ones that are committing crimes, nobody's getting arrested. There's certain areas, I think it's called the Jungle. I don't know if that's, I have to see if that's in Seattle or in Tacoma. But it's called the Jungle, and the police won't even go into it because it's just too dangerous. I think it's in Seattle. And so it's stuff like that that becomes a big problem. The city knows about it. These are areas that should be worked on. Tacoma, I think, is totally fine right now. I shouldn't say totally fine. I think it's okay. But there are certain things that if we don't get a handle on it, it's going to head in that direction. There's an area of the city that has notoriously had homeless folks. These were people who wanted to be homeless. These were people who, I'm not going to say are necessarily drug addicts, but nowadays they are. But when we're talking like 30 years ago, I don't know what the circumstance was, but in one of the things I follow about Tacoma, there were people who were talking about, I remember when I was a kid, my parents would talk about this particular area. And there's a bunch of apartments there. And so the homelessness lived near the interstate. And because of the way they designed the interstate, how they do the interstate, they have fences there and all that, there's a row of bushes and trees. Well, you can't see it. The trees and bushes were done to kind of keep the noise down from the interstate, but it also provides perfect cover for people who want to sleep near the interstate. So, and you can't find them. So if someone were to steal a package and run and head for the bushes, who's going to run after them, right? So these apartments would get a lot of break-ins, and they still do to this day. There's a lot of times where people who are homeless break into a lot of those apartments in different areas over there, and they steal stuff and do all these different type of things. Now that's here in Tacoma. The city should do something about that. They should do something about it. That's kind of how I think that when you look at crime, it's a layered approach. People start committing little bitty crimes to see if they can get away with it. If the police do nothing, or if the police can't do much because the court system it's a revolving door, then the criminal just wants to do more and more and more because there's no consequences. And so I think that, it's possible for Tacoma to head in that direction. Now, with that said, the same thing goes for Seattle. Most of what you see in that video, you're not going to see all over the city, right? You're not, for example, where I live, you're not going to see a lot of homeless folks doing that type of stuff. You may see a homeless person walk every now and again down the street, or when you go out onto the main street out there, you may see some homeless people walking by. But as far as seeing clusters, you're not going to see that. You're going to see it in downtown. You're going to see it in some of the areas that are close to the interstate. When you're talking about Seattle, you may see occasionally someone who randomly is outside of downtown, or maybe a couple of people, especially when you go down, what is it called? 99. When you go down Aurora Avenue, you're going to see a lot of homelessness, a lot of prostitution up and down that street. And you'll see areas, and we're talking probably a good 5-6 miles from downtown, but you'll see areas where there's just nothing but homeless folks just out near a store or something. And so as you go into downtown, you see a whole lot more. And we're talking large areas. It's to the point where at nighttime, it's probably not safe in downtown Seattle, especially when you're going around Pioneer Square and all that. It's really not that safe if you're by yourself. Now, I would go down there and what have you at nighttime, and I'm a pretty big dude, so not many people bothered me. The buses that stop on 3rd Avenue, I believe it's called, right in that area, a lot of people take those buses because that's kind of like a busway. It's kind of like our transit plaza, even though it's not. And in the one video that I did link, they talk about the open air drug trade. Well, that's on 3rd Avenue. But at nighttime, it's kind of sketchy. To be honest with you, it's kind of sketchy. And so it's not good for business because they talk about how a lot of businesses, this is not in these documentaries, but we've seen on the news, a lot of businesses have been broken into. They talk about the one lady who moved her store to Bellevue, but there's been others. There was a bicycle shop, I believe, or a skateboard shop, and he's talking about how people just pop into the store real quick, grab what the first things they see, and then they take off. And that has been happening, he said, all the time, to the point of where now he has a buzzer that you have to buzz before he opens the door to let you in. That's how bad it is. Now, there are certain parts of downtown where you have that type of issue. There's other parts where they're like, we've never seen that. And there's more areas of downtown where that doesn't happen than do. But it's enough to where it does hurt businesses, and it's enough to where people are saying, you know what, given all of the politics of Seattle, given the increased amount of crime that's happening downtown, it's just not worth it. Some of them are moving a little bit further away from downtown. Some of them are moving to different parts of downtown. Some folks are moving completely out, going to Bellevue, and then some, of course, are coming down to Tacoma because it's just a little, the crime situation is not as bad. So I wanted to do the video talking about my thoughts on it because I think that people give a false perception of Seattle. It's not, it's not like a slash and stab city by no means, but it's also not a city that hasn't had its share of crime, and crime is increasing there. People want to talk about Tacoma and how it's just rough, and they want you to think that there's people crip walking and throwing up gang signs, and that's just not how it is at all. That's not to say that we don't have gangs here. Of course we do. Most American cities do. But it's not the way that people try to make it out to be. And then when you look at Seattle, it's going through a lot of issues right now. And to be honest with you, I don't know if they have the right people in place to really make that change. I mean, keep in mind, right now, a lot of their city council folks are not even running for re-election. I mean, a huge chunk. So that should tell you something. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do I think that Tacoma's heading in the direction of Seattle? It's possible. It's definitely possible, but I think we have good leadership here so far with our mayor and with our city council. They seem to be pretty on it. Hopefully they will look at this documentary. It has been talked about a lot. It's been talked about not only in Portland, but all the way up to Vancouver. There's been people having this discussion. They're looking to places like Rhode Island because they seem to have a pretty good program that works. Hopefully this documentary will strike a spark in the mind of politicians here in Seattle and have them replicate what's going on up there in Providence. We have facilities here that are big enough to handle the issue. We spend over $1 billion. Seattle by itself spends $1 billion to tackle this entire issue. So that's enough money to handle what they need to handle. I think Tacoma, we also have facilities large enough to handle the homelessness situation too. And they're just sitting there. I mean, it's insane. These are facilities that most cities would say are Class A. But here they're just sitting there and nothing but mice running through them. They're not being used. So yeah, I think that the city, both Tacoma and Seattle, should do a whole lot more. I think some of the other surrounding cities that have issues too, they also have issues too. I think that they should also work on this issue, and I think drug treatment is one of the first steps. First, making sure that the police can arrest people that need to be arrested and that it sticks. Secondly, the drug treatment stuff. There's people like Noelle, who is a social worker that dealt with that whole substance abuse. Like when she was seeing clients and stuff like that, she basically said it's a process. So it's a long journey. It can't be solved just with money. And giving people a house, it is a process. You have to go through, and she knows all about all that. So she did it in New Mexico. When we lived in Albuquerque, she worked at a job that did the exact same thing downtown. So anyhow, I can go on and on and on about it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.